Welcome to this short presentation on uncertainty and anxiety. I'm Professor Pieter Kruger. I'm a consultant clinical and sports psychologist and currently the director for the Institute of Psychology and Wellbeing. I want to talk to you briefly about the current situation we find ourselves in. So dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, there are quite a number of challenges we can actually discuss. One of them obviously being the geographical confinement we find ourselves in and the related challenges that comes with it. But if you look at the mental impact of this, it's probably one of the bigger things we have to contend with. Most of us are hopefully from a health perspective still fairly safe and under control, but the mental impact is quite significant. One of the key reasons for this is the fact that the brain just doesn't like uncertainty. So in a situation like COVID-19 where there's no textbook, there's no past history of us knowing how to deal with this, it leaves us with that feeling of not knowing what's going on, hence the uncertainty. And the brain doesn't like anything like uncertainty or ambiguity or volatility, which all of these, to be honest, we find in the current situation. So what happens with the uncertainty is the brain registers it in a part of the brain called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is part of the brain's pain circuitry. So it actually registers as a very uncomfortable, physical uncomfortable situation to be in. But the key thing is then it triggers our emotional center in the brain, specifically a part called the amygdala, which is responsible to trigger cortisol, the stress hormone. So the current situation is having quite a big impact from that perspective. If we look at the symptoms that something like this secretion of cortisol in the system will unfortunately lead to, is at the extreme end of the spectrum, we see panic symptoms. Things like increased heart rate, feeling weak or faint, the very impending sort of immediate feeling of doom or terror about to happen. So it's at the very extreme end of the spectrum. Luckily, most of us will probably be down the spectrum to the lesser end, but still something resembling generalized anxiety symptoms. This will include things like ongoing excessive worry about the worrying themes. It will be things around job security. It will be things around the future. It might be to do with family or elderly parents. But we find these themes mulling around in our heads quite often. Very often, it unfortunately leads to an unrealistic view and sort of blowing up the magnitude of the problem as well. But we see some physiological symptoms, issues with sleep. We see aspects around losing appetite, overeating, muscle tension, headaches, sweating, etc. So very importantly to state at this point is that a lot of the generalized anxiety symptoms is very normal. So you can expect to experience this under the current circumstances. But if you have 3 or more of these symptoms on an ongoing basis at a fairly high intensity for more than 2 weeks, that's usually the point where you need to maybe stop, get in contact with your general practitioner, your family doctor, or get in touch with a mental health professional. You can call us on the mental health helpline or find somebody that can assist you with this. So situationally, we can expect these symptoms. It shouldn't be around for most of the time for a period more than 2 weeks. To understand anxiety better will help us to deal with this as well. So anxiety is nature's way of keeping us safe. It's like the body smoke alarm. Just because the alarm goes off doesn't mean there's imminent danger. It doesn't mean the house is on fire. It might mean there's smoke blowing in from the outside. It might be a bushfire somewhere. It might be somebody in the kitchen trying to make breakfast and you get some burnt toast, or it might just be a faulty smoke alarm. So just because the alarm goes off, just because you have anxiety, doesn't mean danger is imminent. It means you have to go and investigate, understand what's going on and do something about it. The best way for us to explain anxiety is through something called the anxiety equation. We get anxiety as a result of 2 factors. Overestimating the likelihood of something bad happening, where we feel it's imminent, but then also underestimating our ability to deal with it, so the coping or the resources. Even in a situation like this, where we cannot directly control things such as COVID-19 or what's happening with our jobs in the immediate future, the part we have control over is how we choose to deal with this, the coping, the mental resources. So the conversations you have, the things you read, how you spend your time. Just sitting worrying about these things all day long, it's a bit like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it takes you nowhere. Even if you get up at the end of the day or a week down the line, you're still in the same spot. So we need to find ways to get out of that and constructively deal with this. This usually means that you have to look at the skills you can do, either cognitively, changing the voice in your head, or from a behavioral perspective, things you can do to disengage from the thinking. Get in touch with people, keep yourself busy, find functional and productive ways to keep yourself busy. If you need more assistance, please get in touch with a mental health professional or do call us on the mental health helpline. But in the meantime, at least have an understanding of what's going on from an anxiety perspective. Look after yourselves and stay safe. Thank you very much.